correct this minor error and change it from make the CEQA findings set forth in the staff report. So the applicant is proposing to use an existing 4,500 square foot one-story barn as a private event center. The center is proposed to be leased for private events, including wedding, dances, and equestrian events. The event center would operate on predominantly weekends on average and would accommodate 100 to 150 people with a maximum of 300 to 350 people. No improvements are proposed for the event center. No food preparation or cooking is proposed on site. Instead, food would be catered and brought in on site. This is the subject parcel. The subject parcel is approximately 46.34 acres, and the surrounding land uses are agricultural rangeland. The subject parcel is relatively flat with no hills and sparse native grasses. And the subject parcel has undergone geotechnical evaluation and a 24-hour pump test. The results found the water supply sufficient for this use, and also the owner has completed an application and installed a fire sprinkler system for this project with the Department of Environmental Health. No neighbors or residents are located in the immediate vicinity of the property. The closest neighbor is approximately 3,500 feet from the property. This is an aerial view of, let's see. This is an aerial view of the ranch. You can see in blue is where the bathrooms are. These are ADA accessible bathrooms, separate for men and women, away from the event center. And the yellow is the proposed parking.
This is missing from
this is a view from the event center of the proposed parking. The parking lot would be about 273 parking spaces and would have handicap accessible parking as well. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission review the staff report, initial study, and all attachments, and certify the negative declaration. And staff further recommends that the Planning Commission, if it chooses to approve use permit 114116, do so subject to the following findings and conditions of approval.
Any comments from the commission? Sorry about that.
Not at this time.
Mr. Culler?
Only comment I would have at this time is that there was a lot of information in your presentation that wasn't part of this packet.
Right.
I'd like to see that here because,
Yes, sir.
looking at this, it was pretty hard to figure out even what was going on. That little drawing we had really wasn't enough information.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner DeVries?
So maximum 300 to 350.
Correct.
Getting out of a wedding or something on a Friday or Saturday, did anyone from staff take a look at what that would do to traffic, intersections, clogging up Cienega at all?
No, a traffic study wasn't completed. There is a condition on there is a condition on the staff report for traffic that is similar to what we did for Seventh-day Adventists. Give a year of monitoring and based on a base level of service, if it drops below that, conduct a traffic study to see at the applicant's expense to see about the congestion and where we could relieve that.
And then on the neg deck,
on the neg deck, it says because it's predominantly on the weekends and not a continuous traffic flow, that it wouldn't be considered a significant traffic impact.
Okay. And I was also interested in the issue of noise.
Sure. Noise, the closest neighbor, like I said, is 3,500 feet. And the noise would be buffered by the barn itself. No events would be taken outside. It'd be predominantly on the weekends. So there's enough buffer and space between the closest neighbor. There wouldn't be a significant impact on noise. And then it would be also subject to the county's noise ordinance as well.
But we know from past experience at Leal that oftentimes buffers like that, although you'd think they would be adequate, may not be. Do you have, and I don't have this in my packet, or for some reason, that's why I keep looking over Robert. Do you have hours for music to cut off and maximum decibel levels?
That could be a condition to put hours.
Could be, but it's not now.
It's not now.
It would be the standard county requirements.
Which is what?
The 10 p.m.
10 p.m.?
10 p.m. and then the decibel levels, I can look that up real quick, but the decibel levels that were required by ordinance are required for all operations.
Well, I think that'd be important to include, don't you? Right?
Sure.
It's an event center, quinceañeras and weddings and stuff.
Would that go without saying? That would be included? Because, I mean, we already have a sound ordinance in place.
It is included, even if it's not listed as a condition of approval, it is something that this project is subject to, but
It's
there's
good
no
to note
reason
it.
why we can't add it as a condition of approval, even add our standard noise and hours of operation conditions in just direct reference out of the ordinance.
Because if that's violated and we get a bunch of complaints, then the leverage the county has is to withdraw the conditional, the CUP.
Bring it back to the commission.
Yeah, so I think it's important to have it in there.
I think it's very important because it could be a showstopper for the owner. You know, if he has to cut weddings off at 10 o'clock. I mean, I've been to weddings before that. I don't know if I've been to one that ends before 10 o'clock. So.
Yeah. Well, that's like I said, that's what they do at the Leal Vineyards Winery. They have to cut all that off at 10 sharp.
Yeah.
If they don't, somebody will know.
Yeah.
Okay. You good?
No, it's just there's no traffic report. There's no turn pockets. And also, Piscina's Ranch is down the road from that. Also does weddings on weekends. You know, something to consider for traffic. I think that, my opinion, a traffic study should be done.
A traffic study should be done.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the weekends. I mean, that Piscina's Ranch has a lot of weddings out there. A lot of traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
You good? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so to comment on Piscinas Ranch, the one big thing about Piscinas Ranch is you're coming right off a larger highway, 25. Then you're only on that secondary road for a second, and then you're on private property of the Piscinas Ranch. So that much less effect of the impact, and they can mitigate it a lot easier. This project is up, down, over the river, and on the way past, it's past Thousand Trails.
Yes.
So
it's
Thousand
right
Trails
before Thousand
operates
Trails.
primarily on the weekend. That adds more burden on the roadway. And have you got the width of the roadway of Old Cienega Road in that area? It's probably, 40 feet or something? It's like a lane and a half out there. Just crazy narrow. And also the gate opening on this gate looks like it's no bigger than a two-car garage. It's my district. It pays to know and drive the projects, you know. So I've got some other issues would be all-terrain roadway and secondary access for police and fire protection. If they have an event, it's good they have the fire sprinklers, but let's say they have an event and they need medical attention out there and somebody freaks out and crashes at the front gate, you blocked all access. So you can't get an ambulance in there. So I would like to see a secondary access of some kind to be able to get in there, number one. And then that would also need to be probably an all-weather road coming in. So if you're going to bring them in on the main gate or you have the either or, I might want to see an all-weather road on that main gate so people could maybe move off to the side a bit to allow police and fire to come in there. just for that protection. You said 350 top, but we only have 273 cars. Well, I guess some people still ride in another car with someone once in a while, so that might work. And then I'd like to know what the gallons per minute on the well is. Do you have the information?
Yes, I do have the information.
And I think a traffic study out there would be reasonable because of the narrowness of the road, because you've got a bridge that you've got to go over. You've got a right angle turn before you hit the bridge. You do have a lot of roadway off to the side of the roadway and shoulder in certain areas you could use, but I don't see this being anything like the Seventh-day Adventist Church on McCloskey at all. But maybe that's just me.
The max being 36.96 gallons per minute.
Okay. Okay. So, commissioners have had their say. I'll open up for public comment. The public have any speaker cards on this?
No cards on this one.
Okay. It looks like we're going to have a couple. One of the brightest engineers in the county. Good evening. Could you state your name?
Ann Hall here on behalf of the applicant with San Benito Engineering. Thank you. And I'd just like to do some clarification because obviously there's concern about this event center. One thing I'd like to point out is the event center, they've operated at least 14 events under temporary use permits up to this point. So there is some history of actual events going on. It's not a mystery in terms of has there been a traffic problem? You know, obviously, when you see 350, is there going to be a traffic problem? Part of the intent here, after discussion with staff, was rather than going in for temporary use permits 3 or 4 times a year like they were doing, the staff suggested they go ahead and get a formal use permit, then they don't have to go in and get temporary ones all the time. So they've been having events here. There hasn't been an issue with traffic. That was part of the thought on the staff in putting in the condition of saying, let's observe it for a year, another year, maybe they'll have another 3, 4, 5, 6 events, see how it goes. If there's a problem, then the condition states that they would have to get a traffic study done. And this is similar to the condition that was put on the Guerra Event Center when it first started. They were not required to do a traffic study. They were required to be observed for a year and see how things went. And so I felt that was a comparable requirement. They're still on the hook to do it if there's a problem. There hasn't been a problem in the past 2 or 3 years with the events that are going on. Obviously, if there is, in the future, you have the ability to require a traffic study. And so I thought, and again, you've done the comparable for comparable uses in the past, so that was agreeable to the applicant, and it seemed to cover the county as well. In the process of getting this full use permit done, we have had the fire marshal out. They've installed full sprinklers and had it alarmed, as Ray said. They've gotten approval from the fire department. The main gate coming in right now is about 20 feet wide, and it has an all-weather surface on that road. What's not really shown very well, you can almost see it. There is the old road. The old gate is a secondary access road, which is DG, so it's all-weather as well. And so that could be used in the event of an emergency. It's just cut off the edge of that picture right there. It's about 150 feet away.
Okay.
And so I believe that answers your question regarding secondary access.
Yes.
They've also hired a consultant to come in, and they're fully compliant for ADA and signage for the restrooms around the area. They've made an effort to make this an event center that is fully compliant in the course of the past year and a half that we've been working on this. You asked about the well capacity, and Robert gave you the capacity from the report. They actually have more water. They put a smaller pump on it to do the 24-hour pump test because it normally runs at a much higher rate, but they didn't want to waste that much water. So The 36 is a pretty good gallons per minute, but they actually have more available to them, and they have some pretty good storage capacity. So I
So
think that addresses.
we can get a Knox key on that second gate?
Sure, that's not a problem.
Okay.
Is there a gate on the second road?
There is a gate.
I never noticed it.
It's 18 feet. Excuse me?
I never noticed it.
No.
It's right at the bridge.
Okay.
So I think that answers the questions you brought up. Did you had something, Dan? Did you have a different question?
No. I was just my interest was just noise and neighbors and people complaining about.
Oh, okay. And that was I was going to say in regard to the fact that they have had events. So far, there has not been noise complaints.
Oh, that's good.
Obviously, they still have to comply with the county ordinance for noise, and that's not an issue. But just for your own information, they have been having these events, and thus far, there has not been noise
Didn't we
complaints.
do an airstrip for this guy a few months ago? Mm-hmm. Same place, right?
Same place, and so it was part of the same issue, trying to get it all into compliance.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Ann.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
I mean, I notice there's no how many events you're going to have per year, or is it once you get a conditional use permit, it's going to be open? I mean, you didn't state anything on there. You said 6 events. Was that the last year or the last 2 years?
It said, I think in their application, we had a number of events for years, but it is somewhat open. There's no limit on the number of events. So in theory, yeah, you could have it every weekend right now, the way it's written.
Well, my concerns were it's very vague. It's not. You're giving us more information than we should have had. Was all the, it's come to the table for the full deck of cards. Mm-hmm. Don't throw them all at once. That's my opinion. I mean, I think if continue it to give us all the information in writing and nice drawings, and so we can see everything clearly.
So you're wanting clarification on a number of events per year, or
Everything. A full set of drawings, just not one little piece of paper with chicken scratches on it.
I would say there's been a fair amount of drawings submitted. I don't know what was included in your package. So
Okay, and
I can't
that's
speak to
kind
that.
of a commission level thing too. So,
Okay.
Any other speakers?
I have one question before
Okay.
And you mentioned water storage. Is there water storage for fire suppression on the site? Is that
yes,
What is there?
40,000 gallons.
Okay,
So
that's all.
any other questions for me? The applicant's here as well, if you have questions.
Thanks for helping me with that chair position. Anything else? No? Okay, we're all good. There's a couple of things I would actually like to address. Maybe at the commission level would be maybe coming back, them coming back yearly on on this use permit, and just us touching base, saying in play, making sure traffic is okay. The other question I'd have is of staff. We've got this site next door. I guess the applicant lives in the house? You live next door?
I live on the property.
On the property? Okay, and that's the house that was 3,000 some odd feet from the prop? Okay, so I was just making sure you were noticed and you knew that was going to go in. And if you had any complaints that you might want to bring forward. Okay, so we're good. Who's our other closest neighbor? And did any other neighbors get notified? And did any other neighbors actually respond to the notice? It's the trouble with being out in the county.
Yeah.
They're so far away.
The closest neighbor was 3,500 feet.
Right, and in Thousand Trails.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, so I'm open to a motion and/or,
Well, I'm comfortable making a motion. I think that the associate planner got our message about what we would expect in our package, but I don't see a reason to hold this up for that. So I would move that we approve use permit 1141-16 with the findings and conditions listed in the staff report, and that the CEQA, it's not exempt, that the
If you could indicate adopt the negative declaration.
Adopt the negative declaration. And what was the wording with the CEQA?
Adopt the negative declaration and make the use.
It's on.
And make the use permit and CEQA findings set forth in the staff report.
Okay.
And I do have a question. If it looks like the Planning Commission is going to go forward, I was wondering whether we could just make a minor change to the traffic to indicate the sentence where it says Public Works and Planning staff will monitor the traffic impacts from the event center for a year, and then it has the dates. If county determines warranted, county shall hire a traffic engineer at applicant's expense, and then the rest of the sentence remains the same.
Okay. And include that verbiage in my motion. And also to modify what Commissioner Pierce's recommendation, I think that a yearly review can be done by staff. It doesn't really need to come at the planning commission level.
And the last issue was whether you wanted to say and comply with all noise ordinances as a condition of approval.
Yes.
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 Comply
and
with
that
all
should be
codes,
part of
the county code.
Part of the final use permit, so that it's in writing for the applicant.
So the project shall conform to all county ordinances with regard to hours of operation and noise requirements.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Then we got Commissioner DeVries covered on that.
Right, and I was going to second the motion with a footnote that I agree with Commissioner Cutler's suggestion that the annual review by staff, administrative review, I think would be appropriate, with the caveat that, of course, it should go without saying if a staff issues spots or sees any problems, that would warrant bringing it to the commission for a more vetted review. That would be. Huh?
Yeah.
Would you want to limit that for like a 10-year period of time, or is that indefinite? Indefinitely?
Well, at some point it becomes a review anyway, doesn't it? Is it yearly? Is it 5 years? What's the use permit?
I would keep it in there as it's a condition that runs with the land, and the level of review that takes place doesn't necessarily have to be as in depth on year 14 as it does in year 1.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. So we have a motion, and we have a second with amendments.
Well, footnote. Really, I mean, it's not. I'm not amending the motion formally. I'm seconding the motion that it's administrative review and just reminding staff that if you see anything that bothers you, bring it back to the commission during that annual review.
Okay. And you're okay with the notes?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a first, a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All oppose?
Aye.
Okay, we have one. Commissioner Rodriguez steps back. Okay, so where are we? Should be on number 7, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay. So this will be we're holding a public hearing to consider, to adopt, or just to consider the resolution to recommend the Board of Supervisors the affordable housing element, and that would.
That's 7. Is that right?
Well, it was 4 actually. Now it's 7. So
4. Okay.
it was 4. Yeah. Sorry about that.
We never hit number 5. We never hit 7 that turned to 5, though.
Never did which one?
Number 7 that had been renumbered as 5.
Right. The horticulture building.
Oh, okay.
7.
Corrected. Thank you.
Wait,
number 5, which was number 7,
Okay.
is 2025 San Juan Road. The applicant to upgrade an existing metal building for the purpose of indoor plant nursery. Byron, you're just busy tonight, yeah.
Yes. This is use permit 1134-15. The applicant is requesting to make changes to an existing metal building to facilitate indoor growing of horticultural products located at 2025 San Juan Road. The 9,800 square foot building is currently vacant. New wall, electrical, plumbing, and other improvements are proposed for the interior of the structure. The property is currently being used for the construction of building trusses, which was approved by the Planning Commission through existing MDIS review applications number 63-99 and 85-06. Previously, this specific building was used as an indoor go-kart track permitted under MDR 90-09. The surrounding land uses consist of heavy industrial and agricultural, the City of Hollister sewer treatment plant, the San Benito River, and residential uses at approximately 1,800 feet from the property's closest point. This property is accessed directly off of San Juan Road. If the Planning Commission wishes to approve this project, they do need to include a CEQA finding that the project is exempt under Section 15303, conversion of small structures. There were some concerns by the applicant about some of the conditions, so I'd like to walk those. I do have some minor amendments and other conditions that we can discuss, but at this time, staff wouldn't recommend changing unless the commission directs so. So condition number 1, if you could just please strike in accordance with the terms of the development agreement and just begin that condition with pursuant. There's no development agreement with this project. I think that's the right.
It's a little bit different. I think on our standard condition of approval. If we could just insert this condition of approval, because this one's different because of the subdivision map back. We don't usually have this reference to 66474.
Oh, it's in the wrong reference. I'll tell you what, we'll get back to that hold harmless condition. I'll read it into the record for you if we go ahead and approve this project. The applicant questioned condition number 6 regarded with a lighting plan. And a lot of these conditions, yes, they are holdovers from previous applications, but the site remains the same, and so we feel more comfortable leaving these conditions in. So, for instance, number 6, a lighting plan, due to the location of the site and the fact that it's industrial near the river, we feel that if outdoor lighting is used, that it should be shown on an outdoor lighting plan. Number 9, ADA requirements. Yes, no change. But I think the applicant may want to discuss that.
Right.
See, number 10, bollards. Now, this one may be in place as it is. Along with number 9, ADA requirements, we should reference that this is for employees and not patrons at this point, because they were in there due to patrons, but the safety risk is still there. These conditions should have been taken care of by the previous applicant. If they're not, we'd still like to see them involved in this application. That's condition 9 and 10. Number 14, fire clearance. Prior to any operation on site, the fire marshal shall sign off on whatever occupancy is being granted. That, again, goes with any construction. So we're not inclined to change that condition. And then number 20, operational characteristics. If anything is happening with that building and what's going on inside that includes color, lighting, noise, vibration, electrical disturbance, smoke, or odor discernible at the exterior boundaries of the building, then those operations are prohibited. So I guess that at this point, we're not inclined to change any of those conditions except for the hold harmless condition. County Council, is there another condition that we're interested in adding?
I would like the Planning Commission to consider a condition of approval number 21, which would be to comply with any applicable local and state laws and regulations as now exist or may be enacted in the future, which may pertain to cultivation on site.
I know where that's going, but I have another question. So this is going to be a greenhouse, essentially. Okay, what's the anticipated amount of truck traffic that's going to be going into on and offload in this area, and will that be will that impact traffic, or will that trigger traffic or turn lane or anything else?
I believe they identified there was a number in the application which did not trigger any further improvements based on county ordinance. It didn't trigger any type of study. You remember there's multiple other things going on this property, and this one cumulatively isn't anticipated to exceed what the traffic levels are now.
Okay, thank you. And I'll open it up to the commission level. Commissioner DeVries?
Well, can we just get this out in the open? Is this a pot warehouse? A pot grilling thing?
According to the application, it's for indoor growing of horticultural products.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Marty. Mine's not even turned on. That might it won't turn on. Did somebody turn me off? Oh, there it goes. Is this is it a marijuana growing facility, and or does it matter for our deliberation whether or not it's a marijuana grow? I know there's just been a lot of discussion at the board level regarding marijuana cultivation. Do we need to concern ourselves at all with any of those issues?
The application doesn't specify. We don't ask Earthbound Farms what they're growing.
And we
Go
do not
ahead.
have an ordinance in place at the present time.
But we got into something with cockfighting. Remember that, Byron?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, well, no, it's just poultry. And like, no, it's not. It's cockfighting. And there was a huge issue with cockfighting because it was illegal. So, but if you're saying we just treat it like any indoor geraniums or starters for lettuce or something, then so the answer is no. We don't have to worry about whether it's marijuana or not.
Well, you can apply conditions of approval to the project if there's concerns that go beyond typical agricultural practices.
But if that concern would emanate from a concern about marijuana cultivation in San Benito County in general, I don't feel equipped to address that issue because that's above our level of.
Right. And the county has not developed a cultivation ordinance at the present time. So that's the existing situation that we have in our ordinances, that we don't have any specific regulations that apply to it. So we're just treating it as that we would another nursery or greenhouse. And if we have this new condition of approval.
That 21 catches that. Because
Yeah.
if you then, if you then,
Hopefully that will catch that if we do enact an ordinance in the future that would require.
21 would require them to be in compliance with all laws, that new ordinance being one of those laws. But they couldn't say we're grandfathered because we received approval on May 20th. April 20th, I'm sorry.
They might.
420.
We'd have
Isn't
to-
that ironic? Today's 420.
Yeah, 420.
We'd have to address that if it came to it.
Huh?
We'd have to address that situation. They might try to argue it, but at least when you're putting it as a condition of approval,
Baby boomers would
it's
understand.
indicating it as a condition of approval, and it puts the county in that like having that as a condition of approval is better than not having that as a condition of approval. So
All right.
it puts us in a better situation to have that as a condition of approval.
But should the new condition 21 specify including any potential San Benito County ordinance pertaining to marijuana cultivation to bolster the argument that it's not grandfathered?
Right. I already had some language, I think, that addresses it adequately.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner DeVries. Commissioner Rodriguez, do you have any comment?
No.
No? Commissioner Culler?
Not at this time.
Commissioner Lowe?
Not at this time.
Well, then, let's open it to public comment and see if we get anything really interesting on this one. So, public comment, you're open. Do we have any speakers? No cards? Come on, it's 4:20. Okay, well, we'll close public comment, and I'm open to a motion. This is better than nighttime TV, don't you think so?
You open for a motion?
I'm open to a motion.
I make the motion, we approve permit number 1134-15 with the sequel findings and accept the 15303. And what else, Barbara, were you going to add on there?
Condition of approval 21, which would say comply with any applicable or all applicable local and state laws and regulations as now exist or may be enacted in the future, which may pertain, I'll just say pertain, or may pertain to cultivation on site.
Okay, everything that Barbara said
And we,
Can you
we
read that one more
need,
time?
With staff
Oh, we got
changes.
it.
with staff changes, correct?
we also need condition
Condition
one reworded, I think.
Hold on.
Yeah, your
the
hold
harmless, you're gonna
harmless. What do you want to do about your hold harmless?
Take the DA out of it.
Well, what we want to do is make it match the other hold harmless agreement requirements, conditions from the other use permits. So, if I may, can I just read this one in from the other? The applicant shall defend, indemnify, and hold San Bernardino County, its agents, officers, and/or employees hereinafter county free and harmless from any and all suits, fees, claims, demands, causes of action, proceedings hereinafter collectively referred to as legal action, costs, losses, damages, liabilities, and expenses, including but not limited to an award of attorney's fees, expert witness fees, and court costs incurred by county arising directly or indirectly or resulting from the review, processing, consideration, or approval of applicant's project or action taken by county thereon, including legal actions based on negligence by county. Applicant will reimburse county for any damages, costs, or fees awarded pursuant to any settlement, default judgment, or other judgment taken against the county, whether result of applicant's decision not to defend legal action or otherwise. County retains its discretion to direct counsel regarding whether to defend, settle, appeal, or take other action regarding any legal action. And that is our standard identification condition for use permits.
So that would be part of the motion with staff changes.
With staff changes,
Correct.
correct? That's the motion with the staff changes? Everything you mentioned?
Yes.
Barbara? And Barbara?
So 1 and 21 are included.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against? Okay. It moves. Very good.
What happened to those go-kart guys anyway? They go out of business?
I died.
Oh, he did?
His wife, yeah, the guy, he got a heart attack. Not a heart attack. He was only 50.
A nice guy.
He was.
It's too bad.
Okay, now we're on item 4, which has been moved to item 7. Planning Commission to hold public hearing for the affordable housing regulation. It's on you, Byron.
Thank you. You have attached a revised draft of the San Bernardino County Affordable Housing Ordinance. You may wish to continue this item tonight, but we should also open it up to the public and discuss it. Just the highlights of the ordinance is that, number one, it requires a 15% inclusionary requirement, meaning 15% of the development in a project shall be constructed as affordable. There is an option in there to enter into an affordable housing agreement, which may take multiple forms as far as what types of housing, rental housing versus for sale and deed restricted housing, also in lieu fees. Now it's come to our attention that we can't require an in lieu fee without an nexus study. So there is not a breakdown of what our in lieu fees might be in this ordinance right now. So we are right now looking to contract with a firm that will then perform our nexus study for us, and then give us what the appropriate in lieu fee number should be. Historically, we have used affordability gap, and I think many of us here remember the problems that we had with using that as the in lieu fee, because it depended on the difference between median income and median home price, and the median home price fluctuated so greatly that the fee never got changed, and in fact it was hard to keep up with, because the home prices went from $750,000 down to $280,000, and back and forth now. So that's one of the things we would like to have the consultant look at, but we'd like your input as well. A staff analysis based on valuation, which we looked at the last dozen or so homes built in San Bernardino County and looked at what the value of those homes were, and then looked at what 15% of that was, and that gave us numbers of around $30,000, $30 to $50 a home, depending on a valuation. So to us, that's what 15% looks like in a dollar amount. Now, applicants, especially applicants of large projects, are going to look at that affordable housing agreement or actual construction or contracting with a nonprofit to work that out, as opposed to paying that in lieu fee, because that could get quite pricey. The commission may also want to look at square footage versus subdivision. Right now, the ordinance, as it's written and as it has in the past, applied only to new developments. So when you subdivided, that was the only time that a fee was charged, or that a affordable housing requirement was charged. Based on some of our neighbors to the north, we're looking at other housing ordinances, and they charge per square foot impact fee for every residential unit. On those, again, to our north, they were charging around $15 a square foot. That's not what it would come out to here, because their income levels, the ones that we looked at, are probably twice as much. So, we would look at probably around half that. But again, we're going to have a consultant take a look at what those numbers are. It would be considerably less, but just so you know what some of our neighbors are doing, especially to the north, who have a very their affordable housing problem is our affordable housing problem. So with that, if there's any other words from staff, we'd recommend you open up to the public and discuss some of the issues.
Let's take it to the commission level first. A couple of things I'd like to know is so we have consultants come in and talk to us about these things, but do you have any in the real world? Do you have any actual developers, stakeholders, bring some of those guys in so we can sit down and say, okay, where does the straw break at? Okay, at what point? Is it 30%? Is it 20%? Is it 15%? Whatever. So it does no good to have these ordinances if they so overburden that it stops development altogether. Then we don't have any affordable at all. So I'd be interested in getting stakeholders together and finding out these things, as well as consultants. I mean, the bean counters are good, but they live in their own computer spreadsheet world, and I've found that you can get completely different findings from both groups, and they're valid, both of them. So do we have anything like that in play as well for this?
There has been no specific outreach. I can tell you we've had many discussions with developers as far as how they see it, what they'd be willing to contribute, what they wouldn't be willing to contribute. But we have not had a formal stakeholder meeting.
Sure, because ultimately what happens is whatever you do here is going to burden the other buyer. And it's just going to either take prices up somewhere else or something like that. There's many sections of this that I don't necessarily agree to. I think most of this needs to come back to the Planning Commission for us to be looking at. I see a lot of references to going back to supervisor's level, but let's face it, planning lives here in this house, right here, right now with us. And we have a book, several books that we follow, and they don't. Okay, we have ordinances, we have general plans, we have CEQAs, we have all of these elements. And we are our own body, and we are pretty good at what we do most of the time. So I would like to see this starting to come back into the house that it belongs in. So with that, any other commissioners have anything to say? Commissioner DeVries.
I had a few questions. Mr. Chair, Byron, you said a nexus study is required for in lieu fees, but wouldn't a nexus study needed to be done for determining the precise percentage of a development to be built to? Like, why did you come up with 15 as opposed to 20 as opposed to 10? I'm not saying that's the wrong number, but it seems like that also requires some type of determination.
Mm-hmm. Well, 15 is consistent with a lot of the other ordinances we're looking at. 15 is, a number that gets floated around anecdotally as well, and we haven't discussed with a consultant whether 15 is appropriate. It's really the fee amount. I don't know, Barbara, if you wanted to.
Yes. I think that some of the cases out there have differentiated between land use planning, which would fall under a more legislative police power of the county, versus a monetary exaction, which they view it as more of an impact, an actual impact fee.
More leeway
but
with the former than the latter. There was a Supreme Court case where one of the highlights that I took away from the case was that because no money actually changed hands, it was San Jose, where they actually was, they had an option to pay a fee, but basically it was a land use planning matter where they said that this is the way you're going to shape, your development, but there was no actual fee that was coming to the county directly as an imposition. True,
That was the logic.
but there's a fiscal impact to whether you determine it's 12%, 15, or 18. That's going to translate to dollars very quickly.
Right, but there were some like different ways that the developer could make the houses more affordable, whether it's by size or maybe by the finishes of the properties, or doing the project on site versus off site. So I mean, there's some options that where they might be able to meet it without the same impact as paying a fee too.
Okay. Yeah, that I just did the math real quickly, Byron, on the per square foot. Was Santa Clara County do that, or Gilroy and Morgan Hill?
San Jose was $15 a square foot.
15 a foot. So a 2,500 square foot house, that's $37,500 bucks per. So at any rate, this would just be my editorial comment. I know I don't think we've reached any kind of clear consensus that I've heard anyway on what the affordable housing ordinance should require. But what I did hear was that the word flexibility seemed to be appropriate, depending on the development, that we wanted to have a couple of tools in our toolbox in order to accomplish affordable housing. And one of those tools I think that's very important is in lieu fees, because it seemed, and I don't want to speak for anyone else here, but it seemed like we all agreed that some developments may not be appropriate to actually, to a shell, build affordable housing on it, depending on its location, maybe its topography, what have you, that maybe it'd be more appropriate to exact a fee. So for those reasons, I would be in favor of continuing this until we can have that nexus study done, because I think in lieu of fees is one of the options that we want to keep on the table. Having said all of that, let me just ask a quick question. How long is the anticipated time required for a nexus study? What kind of undertaking is that?
We haven't had
5
that
months?
discussion yet. I don't think it would take that long. I would anticipate, we'd want them on an ambitious timeline. This item it's been made clear to us by the Board of Supervisors this is a priority.
That's why I ask, because I know the board is hot to trot on this.
So as soon as we can get them under contract and get it done.
Is there any opportunity for us to exact an in lieu fee prior to the nexus study and to this being codified in our ordinances?
I would suggest that it be bifurcated, and that we put in, if you wanted to move forward quicker or faster, to bifurcate it and do the land use planning aspect of it, about what percentage of the project should be affordable, like 15%, 10%, whatever, 18%, but have that as a land use planning matter. Take the fee out of the ordinance and allow them to pay a fee under a development agreement or some other mechanism if they choose to do so, to avoid the actual hard percentages that would be in the ordinance. So there's always the option to enter into an agreement to, do something different than the ordinance. But if you bifurcated the ordinance and dealt with the land use planning aspect of it first and then the fee second, you could do it faster, probably. You could have it at the next meeting. You could have an affordable housing ordinance that you wanted to go forward with if you wanted to do that.
But if we did it that way, then the only opportunity to exact the fee would be per a development agreement, and development agreements are voluntary on behalf of the applicant, right? We can't require
Right.
developer to
They would
enter
either
into
have to do, like, if it was drafted that they had to do 15% construction, then if they wanted to not do that construction, then they could do a development agreement.
Okay.
Or a DA. I mean, a DA could happen.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other commissioners?
Yeah.
Mr. Keller?
So, Byron, couple comments. The title of this this subject was affordable housing ordinance, and then we get into the first page and it says inclusionary housing regulations, and this whole thing was about inclusionary housing. I've said it before. I'm totally against inclusionary housing. I think that affordable housing should be higher density stuff. It should be near the city services. I went on the state's website and did some reading about what they want for affordable housing, and nowhere does it reference ownership of real estate. To me, you get a lot more bang for your buck with higher density rentals. And the inclusionary housing, to me, just smacks of social engineering. And that's not what we're here for. I don't like it. We are planning commission. We deal with planning, general plan, not wealth redistribution. So I don't like the way it's written. I won't support the way it's written. Well, that's my statement from the pulpit.
Commissioner Lowe, are you done?
No, I did have one question in here because you mentioned 15%, and then,
There's a typo in there that references 20. It should be 15.
okay, that was my question.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a follow-up question to Commissioner Culler? Because I'm interested in your thoughts, Jeff. Pardon? Not my fault. There. Yeah, but that light's always on. My fault light. I heard you say something that seemed to be at least a little bit contradictory in my mind, although I don't disagree with anything you've said. You're not a fan of inclusionary housing, meaning a developer shall build 15% of a development at affordable rates, et cetera. But you do like the idea of higher density properties and maybe multifamily near city centers and so forth. So what are your thoughts about exacting from that developer a fee, some guy who's going to make $100 million on a residential development that can go towards the kind of high-density stuff that you like?
Yes, that's what I advocated last time we talked about this.
So you're
in lieu of fees into a fund, and then generate enough of a nest egg, and then CHISPA or one of these people can, build affordable housing, which is, that's something we haven't really defined. What is affordable housing? Does that mean that if you are below the poverty line that you have a right to own a home? And when I was growing up, owning a home was something you look forward to and you save and work hard, and and that's not what it's become. It sounds like now it's just expected, which I don't agree with. I think that affordable housing does not mean ownership of real estate. And that's it's not defined in here, and we haven't talked about it. But I think that's the assumption coming from above that I don't agree with it philosophically anyway.
Yeah, but just to be clear, you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You're just not in favor of addressing the community's need for affordable housing through a requirement of building so many units within that development, but instead addressing the need of the community by exacting an in lieu fee.
Correct. Okay. And locating it where it makes more sense.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
And one thing to think about, if you think about Santa Clara County, which is almost a concrete parking lot, there's no real peripheral areas that are being developed. They're growing, kind of around the center. But if you look at our county, where we're developing, we got a big one going out there, and we're talking about a big one out there, but it's not close to Hollister. It's not close to downtown, which is where all the services are. So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You're too good. Okay. Commissioner Lowe, any comments, please?
Just, I guess, a general comment, rather than getting more specific, from the comments from the other commissioners. I really feel that we need a mix of housing in this community. It doesn't need to be ownership. It can certainly be rentals, but we need it for young professional people, for young families. We just have nothing available for especially the younger people starting out, for the first place for them to live. Where does everybody live that works here? Los Banos. We have to stop that kind of development, or at least across the board make it equal, that people that earn their wages here can afford to live here. At one time, San Benito County per capita had more law enforcement than any other county in the state of California, and that's because all the police officers from the north lived in San Benito County because that's where they can afford to live. Mm-hmm. And we talk about all the traffic, all the problems we have, and a huge part of those problems are housing because people can't afford to live where they work. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I want to see addressed in this ordinance. Now, how we do it, I don't have that answer at this time. But I think, to me, that's the discussion we have to have. And I certainly don't believe that everybody has to own their own home. In fact, I feel strongly that we could certainly do some duplexes, some multifamily, some mix of housing. And that's what I'd like to see come out of this ordinance.
So you would agree then that in lieu of fees are an important element to any ordinance?
Yes. Yes. But I also don't want to look at a development agreement come across our desk for somebody building 100 homes paying $1,500 per unit. Right. I'd rather wait and get some realistic numbers than to just push something through.
Mm-hmm. So you'd be in favor of holding up the whole process until this nexus study is done, establishing the fee, and then have that be incorporated?
I think I would be in favor if we knew we could get that done in the next two to 3 months. I certainly don't want to hold anybody up for 6-9 months. That's
yeah. So we're back to the time estimate for that nexus study. That might be something that the board needs to decide.
Hold on a second, Brent. In fairness, we need to listen to Commissioner Rodriguez as well.
I've done a lot of work all around the cities, and I like the way Salinas was building their subdivisions. Every 10th house was sold to someone from that area at cost. So the developer didn't lose any money, just didn't make any profit on that particular home. And you can still have a nice, aesthetically outside looks like it's brand new. The inside's what counts. Your plumbing, your finishes on the floor, your painting, and instead of no fireplace, make it affordable for someone. And that's, I kind of agree with Pat. At 10% means every 10th home should be built at cost and give it to a resident of San Benito County or sold to a resident, not give. And if the county wants to, that's just my opinion, want to even help some more, they can waive some impact fees on that particular home. But the developer still sells this project at cost without a loss to him. He just doesn't make that $250,000 profit on that one particular home. And, that's realistically, I think that's what they're making.
Can I ask a question?
Surely.
On that line of thought? What happens at resale time then?
Well, then we have to do restrictions.
So there would be
the
some
restrictions from the county or a cloud in the title that it can be handed down to family members for 20, 30 years, whatever the county feels comfortable with. So they stay, in that. Because a lot of times I know that back in the 70s, I want to say they built that VH. It was the first project, low income. And everybody moved in there. I know I wanted to move in there, but my dad didn't want to move into town. I lived out in the country. They were selling real cheap. Mm-hmm. And people got on there. There was no restrictions. Property values went out. They sold and moved out.
Okay, let me hold you there. The project was a little earlier than the 70s. It was an ag project, and it was a self-help ag project. So everyone got together, and there was one contractor per 10 houses that oversaw the people, and they all helped to build each other's houses.
Wasn't that in the 80s?
In VH. Isn't that cool?
No, that was in the 80s. That happened in the 80s, too, all around there, yes.
So that's kind of, and when you're using all of the owners' labor themselves, you can do that. You can lower the price and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different ways of doing it, but I think the issues and everything on inclusionary versus in lieu fees, the whole problem with inclusionary is you could take the fees from inclusionary and get 1.5 houses over here, or you can take one house here and cause it to be inclusionary within the project. So that just doesn't make sense. Okay, you can get more bang for the buck if you take the in lieu fees and move into an area closer to the city core where services are, and dense it up a little bit to where it works better for everyone. And then also, to speak to Pat's, there's actually 3 projects that are affordable, but that depends on what you consider affordable, because when I started in real estate, the houses were 125. Now affordable or low end is 400s. There's a project behind Kmart that's ongoing right now doing that, but there's also one off of Santa Ana Road that pre-sold that was in that range. And there's another project coming up over off of West Side Boulevard called The Villages that's supposed to be similar to that. People are beginning to get it, but also the city is forcing their zoning lot size down really low. And the reason for that is the city is essentially out of balance between single-family, medium, and high density. And so now they're trying to make up for that by forcing high and medium. And so you're going to see more and more of that. But I think also we have a serious problem with police and fire living here, because you're not going to want to hear any of this. But essentially, the only way to make houses affordable is supply and demand. Okay? We were in a moratorium for 8 years. We had restricted, supply, a huge demand, but restricted supply. So what happens? Price goes to the ceiling. The only way to balance this is to encourage more growth to bring the house pricings down. At the size we are and everything else, calling affordable and forcing affordable, it's very difficult at our size of our community. We can do it, but it's going to be hard. But this is part of, I think, is, basically strategic and sustainable planning ideas that we really need to be talking about and implementing now on the commission level. I think we need to be coming up with affordable. We need to be talking in lieu fees. We need to be talking about other project areas and identifying study areas that actually say these densities will work here. And so we can start having good sustainable housing. Now, many people just don't want growth at all. And so they're not going to like that. But if we don't, then retail and other businesses, look at right now, Walgreens has come in, the new tire company's coming in. There's other businesses that are looking about coming into the area because there's some rooftops coming in. So you got to kind of take the good with the bad. And I'll shut up because I'm putting Byron to sleep. So we should open it up to public comment, though, now that we've all had our little word. So this is open to public comment. Anyone that would like to talk about affordable housing, inclusionary housing, housing in general, and just going to help us along.
Marty Richmond.
Marty, you're up.
Thank you, Marty Richmond, Hollister, California. I came really here to talk about this subject. So the first thing I need is a unanimous declaration that I can have 2 hours and 14 or 15 minutes.
Denied.
So that we can really talk about this. It's kind of silly to come up here for 3 minutes and try to talk about this, isn't it? So you should be having a town hall meeting is what you really should be doing, where people can get up and say, you don't have 3 minutes, you got 10 minutes, or we'll discuss it. Look, what we've had here, and I don't want anybody to take this personally, okay, especially the staff. I know how hard they work. We've got a litany of failed programs. It doesn't make any difference which one it is. And in my opinion, all we're proposing is let's have some more failed programs, okay? People up now with the new traffic impact fees paying $48,000 for a private residence, and we're going to put a $30,000 fee on there for affordable housing. Their house is no longer affordable. So now they paid $78,000 for basically nothing. Can't live in that $78,000. Haven't put a nail in the ground, haven't put a nail in a board, nothing. I don't even see how you can even think about discussing affordable housing ordinance at the county without having the city in conjunction with you doing a joint thing. because you have no intention of building any affordable housing in the county. I guarantee it. You're going to dump it on the city. We all know that. This is a foregone conclusion. All the code words like where the sewer is, where the water is, where the services are, those all translate to Hollister, okay? You can shake your head no till you're blue in the face. That's the plan. The plan is that all the heavy lifting on that will be done at the city. You can't find, how many affordable homes have you built in the county over the last 10 years? And this business of we're exploding in the city, and how many homes have been built in the city over the last 10 years? We're exploding 400. That's not exactly exploding in 10 years. That's a growth rate of almost nothing. So what you need to do is you need to come up with a plan that varies itself based on availability and how hot the real estate market is, because that's what's going to determine what people are willing to pay for a home. So if you set a $30,000 fee and it doesn't move, when the housing goes to hell and people come in here and go, oh, that's $30,000 more, they're not going to buy it. And in spite of everybody's good intentions, and I can tell you we went through this with the homeless shelter, everybody wants the homeless shelter. Nobody wants it near their house. I think we've just seen that. Threats of, suing. If you got two homes and one of them is next to low-cost housing or high-density housing, that person is not going to want to pay for that home the same as the guy who's a half a mile away and not near high-density housing. So I will wrap it up by just saying this. This is not you're not coming up with a plan that works. I guarantee it. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
You're welcome. Come see me.
Do we have any other speaker cards?
Seth Capron? I see your name right. Pardon me? I see your name right.
Yeah. Good evening. I'm Seth Capron from Aromas. I've worked in the affordable housing industry for 20 years with South County Housing, and I applaud you for moving a measure forward. Having built hundreds of affordable homes and apartments in San Benito County over the last 20 years, I can tell you it's getting harder and harder to do. And particularly with the redevelopment agency gone in the city of Hollister, without some new streams of revenue coming in, it's not going to happen. In 3 minutes, I can't really talk. It's a long ordinance. I can't talk about much of it, but I just wanted to highlight a few items. If you're going to do in lieu fees, from my point of view, having built separate projects of affordable apartments or affordable homes and building integrated projects that have many incomes all in one area, I don't think it's social engineering. I think it's planning, and I think it makes for better neighborhoods. And I think that if you're going to use in lieu fees, you really should make sure that you don't just get a little bit more bang for your buck, that you get a lot more bang for your buck. Because otherwise I think developers will just all want to do in lieu fees. And I think if you look at some of the neighborhoods that South County Housing has built over the last 20 years where we've mixed incomes together, brought the architecture up on the affordable homes, it doesn't bring down the neighborhood. The values have stayed up. They're beautiful neighborhoods. My favorite kind of affordable housing that we've done a lot of here in Hollister is self-help housing, where the families, Ray was talking about, the families participate in the construction. And the idea that you get more bang for your buck building affordable apartments is wrong if you're comparing it to self-help homes, where the families, through their mortgages, are paying for a lot of that house over time. It costs a fraction as much to produce a low-income self-help home compared to a subsidized apartment. And I think that you should take that into account in what you're looking at. Integrating self-help homes into market rate developments can be done in a way that don't have a big impact on the market rate developments. And I think there's 3 council members or former council members in the city of Hollister who either grew up in a self-help home or built one themselves. So I think that says a lot about the value of that. I think one thing that really jumped out at me is affordable by design is not, it's toward the end of this ordinance. It talks about possibly allowing duplexes or condominiums, even if they're not affordable. It doesn't meet the intent of this ordinance at all, and it doesn't belong in the ordinance. I think that you should look at removing that, because it's really, to me, it looks like a way for people to not meet the goals of the ordinance. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for yours.
Thank you.
Any other speaker cards? No more cards? Anyone that would like to speak? Okay. Please fill out a speaker card after you finish.
No, after you're done.
Or after you're done? Yeah, they're up here.
I don't want to wait for you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Alfred Diaz-Infante. I'm the president and CEO of CHISPA. First of all, I want to take this time to thank you for your support of our development of Buena Vista. I'm encouraged to hear that the county is considering the inclusionary housing ordinance. I've been working in the development business for about 25 years. One thing I've learned about developers, they really like predictability. So when they know what the obligations are going to be, it's easier for them to run their numbers, which is what we do as well. The suggestion of a stakeholder group, I think, makes sense. I've had that experience in other jurisdictions where we've come together with market rate developers, affordable housing advocates, and affordable developers like CHISPA. And we go through the ordinance to make sure it's clear and understandable. I went through, there's some things that really aren't that clear to me. There's reference to requiring the ownership units, but I didn't see much in terms of rental housing. Typically what we advocate for with respects to the rental affordable housing is that be for families that earn very low and low income, low income levels. And the reason is because there are programs out there that affordable housing developers use that can make that type of housing more financially feasible. If you require that of the developers, oftentimes there's a really deep subsidy, particularly if you require that they be ownership. We typically advocate for the moderate income units to be ownership, because in the case of San Diego County, we're talking about a family of four with about $93,000 income per year. So we usually advocate that working families with those kind of incomes, they have opportunities to have a home ownership or affordable homes. And then the affordable housing by design, I've been in some discussions with developers about that. That does make sense if there is a deed restriction, because what you want to make sure that housing is going to be affordable on a long-term basis. The in lieu fees, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. If land prices continue to go up and up, you really can't buy much with that dollar as land prices continue to escalate. So keep that in mind. And other things that we do, and the reason we like to come together with the market rate developers, because we like to sit down with them and explain to them that if there's oftentimes there are opportunities to partner with the market rate developers, that if we work together with the market rate developers and nonprofits through the programs that we have access to, we can make those deals a little bit more feasible for them in terms of providing that affordable housing. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, before you leave.
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah, I've got a question as well. Mr. DeVries?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh. In terms of the problem, and as Byron indicated, what this happened to us before, the in lieu of fee that we were charging wasn't keeping step with the increase in prices. But couldn't we tie that fee to some type of index, whether it's a CPI or have the fee be a percentage of the average rates of sale in a certain area, or just have it go up by itself so that it doesn't become outdated?
There are many ways of doing this. That is one way. We tend to like for the market developers to set aside land and then work with either a nonprofit affordable housing developer. There are actually for-profit affordable housing developers as well that compete for tax credits, and not just for the nonprofits. So oftentimes it's the land that's really what is more important than the fees.
Right.
Particularly when you have a market that is escalating in terms of the land prices, which you have right now in this area. There's many ways of doing this. I guess the point I want to make, it's important to keep it simple, that we all understand what it means. Because as I read through this, there's some things that wasn't really clear to me. So, and I've been doing this for 23 years now. So, when I go through this, and I'm trying to understand it, it's like it doesn't make sense to me. Market rate developers are going to go through this, and they're going to have a challenge understanding what it means as well. But yeah, there's different ways of doing it. You could do it that way. We tend to advocate for having the units available, because what we need is a supply. We need more units.
Yeah, you want the developer to set aside the land, because that gives you the opportunity to get in there and do something, and land's in short supply, as opposed to a pot of money somewhere that you can access.
And the other opportunities you allow, to blend in different housing types as well. So it's not just a bunch of, single-family homes of, 18 to 2,500 square feet, that you have, different housing types. There's some developers, I know Creek Bridge, they are big proponents of a traditional neighborhood design, where they mix in the different housing types. And I know they advocate for affordable housing through design. It's something that they shared with me they've been doing here in Hollister. And I know they've done it in Salinas and down in King City, down in South Monterey County.
You speaking about the in-law unit off the garage?
No, one of the things that they did, which I thought was a nice design in the city of King, is that within the subdivision, they had these 8-plex apartments. And as you drive by, you really don't see it like this massive apartment. Mm-hmm. And those 8-plexes are close to each other. But again, when you drive by, it's not like this big, huge apartment complex. I mean, there's some other issues that come up, because we were going to do a development with another developer who had affordable housing requirements and had a similar design, and we were anxious to do that design where we were going to have 8-plexes that were in different parcels but in close proximity. But that developer lost the development during the market crash.
Okay. So do you see it as the developer buying land off-site somewhere to provide it to you, or within the development itself in its own area?
That has potential, because when we compete for the low-income housing tax credits, which is the primary source that most affordable housing developers use, in order to compete for a certain type of tax credit, you have to demonstrate that services are nearby. And the kind of services, or they call them amenities, include schools, grocery stores, pharmacies, medical clinics, bus stops. So there are times where if that market development is so far away from services, it may make more sense to try to provide that near services.
Okay, so here's $1 million question. Is it more important for me to get a school built in a project area for a developer, or have affordable housing taken from that? Because I don't think we'll be able to get both. And I think we're going to need to have impacts of schools relieved as well. So is it more important for me to go into like Creek Bridge or Benchmark or anyone else and say, sure, you can have this project down here, but you're impacting roadways. Okay, you're widening, you're improving those. We've got lights going in and all the other stuff. And, oh, by the way, you're also impacting our school system. You drop down land and you build the school. And a finished school will sit there and wait until you fill out your subdivision, and then the state can come in and fill it with teachers. Is that more important, or is affordable housing more important?
Well, you really put me on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 kids, so
I got a lot of grandkids.
Schools are really important,
mm-hmm.
but then having safe and affordable housing for the people in your community is just as important. So I wouldn't pit one against another.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's the problem right here. And tonight, everyone's talking affordable, but nobody's talking fire, nobody's talking police, and nobody's talking schools, which are the greater impacts beside the roadways. So, if we go in and overburden the developer, nothing happens. So what we have to do is we have to be talking pretty much all these things in conjunction and saying, hey, because of you in this area, maybe, well, I won't say what area, but this whole area is impacting. We're going to need another fire station over here. You get to build it. No more of this land set aside and the county has to purchase or anything. What we need is finished product on the ground, so it's ready to be, equipment brought into it and it utilized when all the impacts are there. And that's included fire, police, and schools. And we're faced with that. And we're faced with that kind of decision-making here on this commission. So we invite you and we encourage you to stay engaged and in dialogue with us, because bringing developers in, stakeholders in, bringing you guys in. I'd like to see the Nexus study report, and we all sit down and basically do a workshop to where Marty can't speak more than 3 minutes, and really get some good ideas churned out here and get some nuts and bolts going, so we can come out of here with something that's reasonable. If it takes a little time, it takes a little time. But thanks for staying engaged.
Well, thank you for your time and your questions.
When has San Benito County ever had a developer?
We'll be the first.
Had a developer do what?
Build a school.
Build a school, or even give land for a school.
Build a school.
Did Santana Ranch have to do that?
No.
They set aside land.
They set aside land.
The county can buy, or the city can buy.
The school district bought.
Yeah. But if they didn't, it could go into houses. Yeah. Gabe, your turn. And thanks for showing up.
Good evening, Commissioners. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and it's nice to see the audience, a good audience. It was just myself and Scott Fuller last time this was introduced, so it's great to see all of the major stakeholders in the room this evening. A lot of what was already been discussed, I won't cover that, but I did want to mention that, the possibility of during this, if the Commission decides to move forward with a Nexus study, that we take advantage of that time. You have some of the major stakeholders, affordable housing stakeholders, here in the room this evening. We have also been meeting with the City of Hollister, and full disclosure, from last meeting now, I do sit on the Planning Commission for the City of Hollister, and copies of this document have been provided to my fellow commissioners to encourage them to start reviewing these documents, and so that the county commissions can actually start encouraging county staff to talk with city staff, so that we are on the same page. We're going to encourage these to be very mirrored images of an ordinance that the county has and that the city has. Much what Marty was mentioning today, we have to make sure that both of these agencies are on the same page when it comes to these types of documents, as well as the agencies who are going to be following these ordinances.
And Gabe,
so, yes,
since
sir.
you're on that, I think this commission would be, there would be a consensus of this commission to invite the city planning commission to come over and sit in during that workshop.
Absolutely.
I think it would be beneficial to have you guys here. I don't know if you have to post it. Probably do.
Yeah, we would have to go through
and go through all of that, and you can talk to Brent about that, about sitting in and taking the table and getting engaged.
Absolutely. I think it's critical, and having whether it be done at the joint committee between the city and county during those meetings, or have a special set-aside meeting. I know we've done that through the Planning Commission as well as with council, and those seem to be very productive meetings. But I'm just here this evening to let you know that we will be having ongoing meetings. The stakeholders are in the room here today, this month, with the city to discuss this document in more detail, and we hope commission can advise staff to continue that dialogue with the city as well, and the major stakeholders here, in whatever form you guys choose.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, please fill out a card after you've finished.
Just Sunny Flores Community Service Development Corporation. We also do affordable housing. I'd just like to thank the Commission and staff for taking the time to consider an ordinance that includes the affordable housing ordinance, the inclusionary, and the in lieu fees. I won't repeat too much of what was already said. I also agree that if you do the affordable by design, what is affordable by design? If that has some sale restrictions or income limits tied to it, I think that's great. But if somebody just says, well, $450,000 is affordable, I mean, I don't think that's really affordable. How many county employees can go buy that house? So I think that would be something to include in that. But I think moving forward, we definitely like to see an inclusionary. 15% doesn't seem unreasonable, and that's about it.
Thank you. Paul Rovella, Esquire.
I wrote agenda item number 4 on the speaker card, but I have no idea what number we're on right now.
We don't either.
Paul Rovella, I will bear the landowner developer flag today, since it seems like I'm the only one here, at least on this item so far, who's talked about with that representing that interest. So I'm standing here before you with my private attorney hat on, L&G LLP. I think what the Planning Commission is considering tonight is akin to opening a restaurant with half a menu. You've considering moving forward with the land use planning part of this without the in lieu fee part of it. And I think in order to have a successful restaurant, you've got to have a well-vetted, well-rounded menu. I think the same thing with an affordable housing ordinance. To have a successful affordable housing program, you've got to have flexibility, which I've heard a couple of times here. And it sounds to me like maybe the Planning Commission's consensus is to request and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but request that the nexus study be done and to use that time. I like Gabriel's suggestion to use that time to reach out to stakeholders. I think that's one thing really up to this point that hasn't been achieved is reaching out to developers. There's a lot of them around here that are doing business. Creek Bridge, Benchmark's got a couple projects in the county, out of the county. Anderson does a lot of work here. I think those entities might like to have some input in developing an ordinance that presents a menu of options, rental units, for ownership units, on-site, off-site. I cringe even at the strict mandate of a percentage, whatever it is, whether it's 10, 7, 4, 30. We've had a mandated percentage here before, and several members of the current board and commission have worked hard to unwind that because it just wasn't successful. It didn't generate any affordable units. And so even, I'm not saying 0%, but what I'm saying is even the percentage has to be adjustable based on the county's needs, not in addition to the project's limitations and requirements. And so I think with that time to do the nexus study, it gives the county and the city the ability to reach out to groups like CDC, South Valley Housing, Eden, Chispa, in addition to the market rate developers, and to get input on developing an ordinance like this. So I appreciate your consideration of this item tonight, and I just request that you continue this matter so that we can have more involvement and develop an ordinance that's going to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Any other speakers? No? Brent, I was unfair to you. You went and hid behind the podium. You were going to speak. You walked all the way over there and you hid, and I forgot you were there. So you did, huh? Well, now you're on the spot. So you want to step up here and tell us what you were going to say? There's something about Commissioner DeVries or something, how you liked his hairline or something. Oh. Found out who his hairdresser was?
Frankly, I've forgotten, but I would like to make a couple of points, and I thank you for asking. One of clearly our intent, and I think the Commission will agree, and I know the Board agrees, that one size does not fit all, that there needs to be a lot of flexibility in this. I appreciate Paul's comment about even the variability of percentage, although I'm not sure how operationally that might work. But we're certainly willing to explore that concept. The percentage, as Barbara mentioned, is a policy decision. It's strictly a planning issue. The amount of the in lieu fee is more of a mathematical decision, a budgetary decision. But for us in the planning world, we'd rather see bricks and mortar. We'd rather see occupiable homes. And so the intent is to, and don't take this the wrong way, but to set the fee at a level that encourages those homes to be built, whether they're on-site, off-site, apartments, single-family homes, rental for ownership situations, whatever. Doesn't matter, as long as they meet the affordable requirements. And there should be a range. Again, no one size fits all. But the idea is to encourage the homes to actually be built rather than to simply create a campaign chest, a war chest that might never find a place on the ground. This is a work in progress. We absolutely want to have more community conversation about it. I think the idea of a workshop meeting, probably not in this room, in a room that would encourage more dialogue, if you will, would be appropriate. We'd certainly be able to offer the conference room out at Technology Parkway, a high school gymnasium or something like that. But also, this is at the staff level an evolving concept as well, and there's typos in it and so on. So it's a first cut, and we want to make sure that we got your input and the community's input and continue to do that as this thing evolves. I want to make very clear that we're all about community input for this very, very important issue for the community. As you'll hear in another presentation later, this is probably the highest priority issue of the commission and the board in the county today. I'd be happy to entertain questions.
I don't know if this jogs your memory, but I thought you started to get up to address the issue of timing for a nexus study or the amount of time it would take.
Yes, thank you.
Was that it?
Very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much.
I held up 5 fingers. I think that we have to put together an RFP, circulate the RFP, go to the board with a contract, and get a nexus study done, and then agree, tinker with the dotting the I's and crossing the T's and getting the science right. I don't think that's a 3-month or 4-month sort of process. We can get an RFP out maybe in a week, maybe. But getting all of that in place is going to take 4, 5, 6 months, my guess. I don't want to, I'm not trying to create pressure, and I don't want to bifurcate the process. I'm just trying to give you the reality. We only have so much bandwidth to address this stuff, and I have potholes to fill and other things that
When does the board meet
attention.
next?
I'm sorry?
When does the board meet next?
It meets on the 26th, but the next meeting that we could prepare agenda items for would be May 10th.
Isn't that deadline already gone? I think we're past that already.
Technically, yeah, we're technically the
Second meeting in May.
deadline for that. It hasn't, yeah.
Because it almost seems to me, Brent, like it's a board decision whether they want us to bifurcate and pursue the planning side of this with percentages and all those things, and then cut out the nexus study and so forth, and then add that back on later to save time, kind of double track it. Or if that's what the board wants, or if they're fine waiting for 6 months. I know Commissioner Lowe already said that might be too long to wait.
Somewhere
But
later on.
Sorry to interrupt, but by the same token, everyone has said unanimously that in lieu fees is a tool we want to have in the toolbox.
I think it's an important tool. It doesn't apply in every situation. Neither
But
does.
do we want to go forward with an ordinance without it? Seems to be pretty unanimous. No. So then we have county council suggestion of bifurcating or accepting that out, work on the rest while that's being developed, and then add that back on later. Which, okay, but if that's what the board wants, I don't know. It seems like a board decision, like I started off saying.
Yeah, but that's a board decision. You're now at the planning commission, okay?
Well,
And the thing too
decision.
is maybe we're serving at their whatever, but I'm for doing it right. And if we're going to speed up part of the process and at the end up with not as good of a product, I'd rather wait the 4, 5, or 6 months in order to get it done right. So to me, the extra time period, as long as we're going to get it done right. If someone can convince me that breaking it up and dual running it will make it effective and make it work well, and it will be excellent when we finish, I'm in. But I find too many times that this decision was made over here, and then in this process, a lot of other stuff was brought up that was like, oh, wow, that doesn't quite work, and now we need to re-adopt this or change this, and we have an ordinance in play, and people working off of that, and it's just a bad document. So, but Pat, you did say something about timing, so how do you feel about it?
Well, Brent, you're going before the board with basically discussion of what we had that joint meeting on.
I am.
Will
on the
that
26th.
Right. Will that also include some of this about the affordable housing, since obviously that was the number one priority, and how we move forward?
Yes, and it will come up as a part of that report out this evening, and I intend to make basically that same report to the board on the 26th. And from my way of thinking, I can't speak for council. I believe that affordable housing ordinance is a part of general plan implementation, so it conceivably could be addressed at least in a discussion item. There's no recommendation for action on that particular agenda item, but it could be addressed as a discussion item at the board level, just as it can be addressed here as a
right. And so then if the board feels that it's extremely important to move forward, they could certainly direct that
with
something
one
come
part or
back
the
on
other
the
or
next
the whole
agenda.
thing,
So
right.
it could move it quicker.
conceivably.
They're going to do what they're going to do, and we've got to do what we think is right, too, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Well, that's true, but what I'm saying is that, you know, if we can cut the process, the last thing I want to do is send a message that we've allowed development to get down to the last, what they feel is the finish line, they can see it. Oh, well, we're going to do something else now, and you're going to be held up for 9 months.
Well, that was, I think that was not number 2, but number 3 on the marching orders, if you will, from the board and the commission, was to streamline and organize the development process, and I'm already launching into that. So I don't remember what number 2 is. I'll have to look back at my notes.
Wine trail.
No, I have no questions.
Good color.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director. Okay, so did we ever close public comment?
No.
Okay, well, let's just shut that down right now, okay? So it appears the consensus is a continuation, but I haven't got a motion, and I'll entertain one. So you can make a motion. I don't know that I can accept it, but...
I would like to help the commission perhaps frame a motion. If you're interested in closing public comment for now, you can open public comment again at a future time by continuing the agenda item to a future meeting. So you, just sort of thinking out loud for the commission, if that's your intent, close the public hearing for now, continue the item to May 18th, where it would naturally reside again, and then the commission can either open public hearing, public comment again, or not. In the meantime, we can try and organize one or more workshop meetings, invite the commission, invite the city commission, come one, come all kind of thing, and we'll see where we are.
Can we have a workshop meeting at the next meeting? I'd like to have the commission, you know, at their regular meeting, because I want them engaged in the entire process. I think I remember Commissioner DeVries saying, you know, we went through the general plan process, and it only ended up popping back to the commission level, I think twice when he was here, something like that. You had to go to the workshop.
To rubber stamp it.
Yeah, I mean, you had to go to all of the workshop meetings. They were all during the daytime. They were in here. It was difficult. I'd like to have this at the commission level so they're fully engaged all the time with everyone. So can we have the developers come back? Can we have the affordable housing people come back, and all the other guests and the public come back? And 6 o'clock would maybe be okay, but we could take it. We could take it as maybe the last agenda item, so it would give the commuters time to be able to still make it to the meeting.
May I caucus for just a moment?
Do that.
Thank you.
Is that okay with you guys? Okay with it?
Mr. Chair, I don't know how anybody else feels, but this is such an important item, and it's different than the other things we discuss. Wouldn't a special meeting be better?
As long as you guys all know you can totally make it. It's the only time that I can think of that would be where it would be a Saturday or a Sunday for the public, and then that's their only days off too. So anytime during the week and during the day, you're not going to get the public in like you could. So it's going to have to be an evening meeting that we're going to have to educate pretty well and get the word out. And I mean, we're at a good day in the week. They're not going to take off for the weekend yet.
What day of the week?
Yeah, I'm open to ideas.
I guess I believe that if we set a special meeting and we advertise it, and if people really care, they will make.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that having the group of people we have here tonight, maybe development interests here, that would be a good start.
Okay, and we know May, well, you're gone, May.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that May 11th is available as well.
You going to be around?
I'll be here.
Okay, so maybe a special meeting May 11th. Okay, everyone okay with May 11th?
For this item or for a general?
For the workshop.
Okay.
But
Just trying to
basically, it's a
understand.
special meeting of the Planning Commission with a workshop for developers, affordable housing contractors,
Community,
vendors,
right.
whatever. And then, I don't know, I guess we get the San Benito link or whoever, and we get the word out to try to bring the public in. And it's always good to let them know that this is actually a county meeting and not a city meeting. But, you know, it's helpful to get city comments, too, sometimes.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to try and arrange for the City Planning Commission to
Yes.
attend at that same time? Now, they have
Right.
some scheduling issues. They have a meeting on the 4th, as I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And then their regular meeting is the 28th, as I understand it. So
Again,
this
we're
would
talking
be,
the 11th of May, so
Right.
would that be okay, 11th?
Should be okay, yeah.
Okay.
Our April meeting was scheduled for the 28th, but because of noticing issues, they bumped it to the 4th.
Okay.
We have the 4th and the 26th.
I'm sorry, 26th.
Okay.
28th is LAFCO.
Okay.
I think-
And just to be clear, it would be a planning commission meeting
It
that
would
you
be.
guys would be at, but you have to check with your legal counsel to see about whether you should have to open your meeting.
You
We
probably
call it as a special meeting.
probably have to
Yeah.
adjourn from the 4th
Yeah.
to.
We'll keep
to
it
that.
all, we'll keep it together. So, continuation of actually this to our next regular meeting, but now we're going to a special meeting on May 11th of a workshop. Okay? We're with it?
Barbara, are we continuing this item to a special meeting, workshop meeting, and then continuing from there to the 18th to be on the regular agenda, or?
Yes.
Because otherwise we'd have to advertise as a different agenda item somehow for the 11th.
If it's a planning commission meeting, yeah.
Right. You can just continue it, I think, to the 11th at 6 p.m., if that's the intent of the Planning Commission. And then they continue it from that date to another date if they want to.
Okay, so we can continue this, item 4, to the 11th.
Yes.
And we'll reopen public comment at that time and invite all of the workshop people and the city.
And one last logistical question. Do you want to try and hold it in this room, or shall we look for a different
Yeah.
space that?
I don't, unless the city absolutely
workshop-y.
shows up, with our attendance things, we can actually get quite a few people in here.
Okay.
I've seen it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
One other thing, Marty's suggestion about the time limit might be a good one too, is to stretch the 3 minutes to something
Yeah.
longer so people can.
yeah, we'll take it on with more of a workshop style or
3.5.
scoping style, and
4 tops.
maybe we give a longer time period for speaking, and then everyone goes around one time, and then if everyone's been heard, maybe we can have other people come back and step
Sure,
back up again.
at the chair's discretion,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, we want to stimulate conversation, not suppress
Not
it.
stifle it, yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so we have a consensus of the commission?
Do you want a motion?
We actually need a motion for this.
Oh,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could actually have a couple of just follow-ups before you get to the motion.
Okay.
I want to make sure that a few things I heard from the commission this evening. One is the power lying at the planning commission more than the board, as far as not just construction of the ordinance, but the actual negotiation and the affordable housing, having the commission review the affordable housing plan, whereas right now it's written as with the board. So I heard that. I heard emphasis on less home ownership and more rental, more mixed designs, things like that. Right now it's a little heavy on the ownership. We certainly need the time in the study, and fourth was the outreach, so we're covering that right now. So if there's anything else that you want to make sure that we focus on between now and the 11th.
Well, I think there was some, Mr. Chair, I think there were also some comments on affordable by design that needs to be bolstered.
Yeah.
And I would suggest to the community in general that we would be happy to take suggestions about how that should be edited between now and the 11th so that we can have a real conversation.
Yeah, and anyone in the audience that wants to engage Byron after the meeting and develop that, come on down, okay? Yeah. So I still need a motion for our workshop meeting to go on the 11th of May at 6 p.m.
Mr. Chair, I will move that we continue this discussion to our workshop meeting on May 11th at 6 p.m.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then we don't have anything else to continue to our regular meeting, do we? No. We're good. Okay. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you at the special meeting on the 11th.
General plan update.
And we haven't adjourned yet because I still want a developer thing going. And so a general plan update, but also I'd like that special plan area, an update on that whole special plan area from the director as well.
Plan update.
I think you're on, yeah.
10.
So, Mr. Chairman, good evening again. In your packet, there is a short staff report that I'm trying to make a flat space here. Sorry. In your packet, there's a short staff report that has a couple of matrices that show the results of the voting, if you will, that we used the sticky dots for back on the 5th of April.
How did I miss that?
They're toward the end on pages 4 and 5 of the staff report, and I'd just like to show you how those work very briefly. The first one is ranks the most voted for, the highest voted for top 23, and it's sort of a natural break between those and the rest of the herd, if you will, by their overall score. The very top vote getter, the highest priority is zoning for a variety of housing types, densities, and prices, as we've been discussing through the evening. There were some surprises right behind that. The Wine and Hospitality Combining District and the Trails Master Plan were surprises to me, at least, perhaps not to the Commission. Some of the other things that are really important, sort of core bricks in the overall process, like the CEQA guidelines updates, are more technical, and of course we didn't really expect those to rank highly with the Commission and Board, and they didn't. But we're going to be pursuing those very quickly as well. The difference between column 1 and column 2, just so it's clear, is column 1, the left-hand column, is the number of highest votes, or if you'll recall, red dots or bright pink dots that the Commission and Board gave for that particular item. If you recall, you each had 5 dots, so there was and presumably you only voted for each thing one time, although I didn't specify that in the rules. So of the 10 people among the commission and board, 8 made that one of the highest priorities with their five votes. The score took each of those highest vote dots and counted as a 3 weighted score: 3, 2, 1. High, not quite so high, and moderate priority. And that's what this weighted score is. So you can get an idea of all of the dots and how the votes were cast, and that's why there's this spread here. The second chart on page 5 is probably more important, more readable. And it organizes stuff by topical area. And you can see that there's, again, quite a spread. There are quite a number of things under planning and development review, for example. Many of them don't rank really highly, but it's clear to the commission and board and now staff that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the creating a planning process that makes sense sort of arena. So that's something that we'll be focusing on very heavily. So that's sort of the overall report on the task, the workshop that we had. Are there questions or comments from that part?
Just one. You missed something. You promised me.
Okay.
You promised me. I was going to get this, but I was going to get all the staff's recommendation and scores. You know, the experts, you know, the staff, you guys.
Oh.
You were going to score
Well,
this
I'm sorry,
for me.
I don't remember promising, but we will, absolutely.
Yeah, all of you guys were going to score these,
We'll have it
so we
tomorrow.
could get a little bit of an idea of the real world and what you guys actually thought.
Okay. Well, we're pretty much all here. We can have that for you by the end of the week.
Yeah, you can have it ready for the workshop.
Okay.
Okay.
Absolutely. That would be interesting.
No, you probably, we're getting old. You don't remember as well as
Yeah.
me either. It's okay. And then, does anyone else have any questions of this?
Not of this, but I had something to talk about regarding the general plan in general.
Okay, before you move on to that,
Yep.
Study zone out there in the South Side area and Union Road area, where are we at that? Because it's been a little while since we've touched on this.
Is that your question? Do you want to?
What we talked about this morning?
Sure.
Oh.
Well, let me tell you where we are.
Mm-hmm.
We have, and that's a part of there's a map in your report as well that sort of describes the lay of the land and where some things are happening. And I'm sorry it's not in color. It's not very readable. I do have color copies, but my low bid color printer ended up printing them all in blue. So bear with us. I made 10, Michael, so there'd be enough for some folks in the audience if they share. Where we are with that is there are 9 known development projects in the South Side Road, Enterprise Road, Union Road area, roughly from the migrant labor camp, from west of South Side Road out to east of Ridgemark. They are in various stages of gestation, I guess, development. In various, stages from conceptual to nearly done, and they total out at haven't counted recently, but very nearly 1,000 units, and that's almost the size of the Pulte project, San Juan Oaks. All of these are being, as you know, processed individually at this point through tentative tract maps, zone changes, mitigated negative declarations. And as we've discussed, there's no opportunity at this point processing them through as individual applications to consider the ramifications on the broader community and on this neighborhood of all those projects as they fit together. The issues there are several, and the things that we lose out on if we process them individually. First, Enterprise Road ends at Southside. It extends from Southside east to Airline Highway. For my money, it probably should extend west, perhaps all the way to San Benito Street, to create a better network and take some serious traffic congestion off of the intersection of South Side and Union Road. With all this stuff going in, that's going to be a mess. It's just going to be a mess. Although we can widen the intersection there, it's going to be very difficult to widen Union Road and South Side Road, for that matter, to alleviate the traffic conditions. So building a robust network of roadways within this area is going to be very important.
Is that
Mr.
practical?
Chair, did you want to put this on the next agenda too, so we can have a full discussion of it?
We could do that too.
Okay.
We just like to listen to him talk.
So do I. So
I do too. Yeah, I mean, as long as nobody worries about how late we go. Isn't that a little? I mean, you're taking it right down to the river. You're going to engage San Benito River. You're going to have habitat issues, and then you're going to run it up along behind two houses and try to pop it back out on Union. And Union's bridge is going to be enlarged.
And so is Hospital
Chair.
Road Bridge.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I feel a little uncomfortable. What's on the agenda is supposedly
Yeah,
just
it's
a
true.
report.
This is a director meeting. Okay.
We're getting a little.
Okay. I like ideas and talk. So okay.
Well, I think it's a.
Let's
great
get it on
thing,
the
and
agenda.
Let's put it on an agenda, though.
Yeah, because it's sort of on the agenda as a director comment, right?
I think that there's a lot of public interest in this issue.
Yeah.
From developers, from other people that might want to be present if it were on the agenda.
Let's agendize this then.
Okay.
And make sure everyone gets to get in and talk about it.
When would you like this?
Next regular meeting.
I'm not here. It's perfect.
Well, you fixed that pretty easy, huh?
I'm in Italy.
Okay, when are you going to be back?
I can call in.
Skype. You Skype? Yeah, there we go. When's your next meeting?
Yeah, we could combine it with the discussion at the special meeting if you like. It's very related. There are issues that tie together, absolutely.
Okay.
That means we would need to notice the special hearing, this as an agenda item for the special hearing. That's okay.
Yeah,
We have time to do
You'll
that.
have to do agenda anyway. You'll have to do an agenda.
The city's going to be here. And this is going to kind of.
This
it might take away from the affordable element, but it is in a way part of it.
Yeah, very, very related.
On the outer edge. Okay.
This is immediately adjacent to the city, so I think they'd be very interested, and certainly would.
Yeah, and we have them here, so yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Schiff, can I ask Brandon a question?
Yeah.
Well,
Commissioner DeVries?
No, go ahead, Yara.
Hi, Barb. What's up?
okay, well, I didn't know whether the planning commission was treating.
Spike, microphone.
Your mic.
Yes.
Okay, were you treating this as a director's report or part of the general plan?
I was kind of thinking this was a director's report, but I've been wrong before.
Whatever
Did
you'd
they
like
close
it to
the
be.
general plan issue? That this is sort of under the general plan, so then when somebody's commenting on the general plan issue, you could consider public comment during that issue. If you want to have public comment on that, the general plan portion of it. And
Okay.
Tonight or on the 11th? I'm confused what you're talking about.
there's a
it's
member of the
agendized.
public that wants to have a public comment on this.
Oh, Marty does?
Yeah, Marty wants to talk. We're trying to figure out whether we're going to let him.
Do you want to talk on the 11th when we really get into it, Marty, or you want to talk tonight? Tonight? All right.
3 minutes.
I had a question for Brent before
Sure.
you sit down. So would you like me to present that
Please.
concept that I came at the 11th or tonight?
No, I think we should put it out tonight and let it simmer.
I think so
Absolutely.
too. So is now appropriate? Or do you want to do public comment and close?
Let's do public comment and then pick you up, okay?
Yeah.
So let's open public comment for Marty. Anyone else that wants to talk as well?
That's not on the agenda.
It's general plan.
Oh, general plan. Okay. Okay, good. Okay.
And the Marty Richmond from House, the Director of Management Resource Agency, actually mentioned exactly what my comment is, which is about the fact that it's close up against the city. I think I ran both maps and all the locations of everything everybody had on all their lists for development, and it's obvious to me that anything at all in Zone 2, the city and the county basically should have one development plan and one development map, because you're just bumping up against each other on every roadway and every artificial line about sphere of influence and who's got what. So when I ran those on my computer and I looked at them, I went, how can either of the entities possibly do any planning for instance, the use of Fairview Road when you look at the county projects that are going in and the city projects that are going in and the ones that will eventually be annexed because they're in the zone of sphere of influence, if that's the correct terminology. So he hit right upon what I say. And I believe that for those purposes, you guys should have a joint development plan, and that neither one of you should do any development in Zone 2 as defined by the general plan that does not work together with each other. Thank you for your time. Sorry I came late.
Thanks, Marty. Okay, let's close public comment unless we have other comment out there. No? Okay. Dan and Brent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to present to the Commission a concept, an idea that the Commissioners may consider or think about or ponder between now and the time of our special meeting, perhaps. And it's a concept that would involve this. If there's an area in our county that perhaps should have been, in hindsight, a special study area under the general plan, but which was not for whatever reason, and if that area in our county is comprised of a number of proposed developments, and if lastly, it's true that we would like all the developments in this area to be coordinated and integrated with one another to come up with cohesive traffic plans and maybe parks and everything that an area should be characterized by in order to call it a well thought of area, not just a development, but an overall area. Then I think there might be some merit to the concept of having each of the developers in the proposed area get together amongst themselves and form a type of coalition, if you will, or membership where each of the developers could sit at a table and come up with concepts as to how each of their individual developments might work together to come up with a plan that the county would otherwise have to go out to contract for. So, for example, in these general plan specific study areas, if there's going to be in the general plan, if there's going to be development in that specific study area, then each of those developments that occur there are going to have to be according to special requirements and so forth, and that all would be done by an outside planning firm. Instead of going out to an outside planning firm to do that work, why don't we have the developers themselves see what they can come up with, working all together? Presumably each development and each developer has a traffic engineer, for example, and maybe they have some designers and some urban planners and some folks on their staffs, whereas if each group could designate, the professionals that they need to come together and sit in a room and say, okay, how do we come up with a unified plan for this area that would work? And then take that plan to RMA, to planning, and say, okay, this is what all the developers in this area came up with. What do you think? I think it could be done more efficiently, more cost effectively. You'd have buy-in by definition because the member developers themselves came up with it. But yet, on the other hand, it would accomplish the county's objectives of having cohesive, unified developments within one individual area. That wasn't a specific study because we missed it, but have everything within that area make sense. And I think, as I've understood Brent's comments over the last how many ever months, that's the objective, to make sure traffic works and these developments speak to one another and they interrelate and they fit, and it's all part of a better design as opposed to islands. So in other words, let the developers come up with something themselves.
And I think that works as long as Brent's giving them the bullets.
Yeah.
And say, okay, these are the sort of the things we're working towards, and then let them see if they can come up with themselves.
And to add to that, we would be delighted to provide the staff support for an effort like that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then, too, they'd understand that they'd be expediting the process,
Absolutely.
which would give them huge buy-in and incentive.
Because the only other option would be you guys all sit out there. We got to go out for RFP and everything he just mentioned for this Nexus study on steroids to get a planning firm to come up with the same thing that these developers could probably come up with themselves and do a better job of it, frankly, because it's their projects. And they could negotiate and haggle between themselves. Well, why do we have to build the bridge? Well, because we built it. You know, they could all work it all out. So by the time it was presented to the county, hopefully it would be a pretty nice document.
Sounds to me like the only ones who lose out are the consultants.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
but they're a powerful lobby.
So we can possibly get that on the agenda for the workshop then, right?
Yeah, as I said, I just wanted to pitch it as a concept so you all could be thinking about it between now and then, and we can, if you think it has some merit, we can look into it more.
Mr. Chairman, I'd love to hear initial reactions. Is this a crazy idea? Is this something that you think might work?
New isn't always crazy, you know.
Crazy sometimes
I think
good.
if you could get it to work, it would really, like, because you're coming from the point of view of the developer. They're coming in. The only hassle that I could see with this is you end up with some little guy, and he doesn't have the clout to be able to fit into the niche somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, if they're all about the same size and they all have equal buy-in, I could see it working, except for the little Campisi or the little whatever that other keyhole place is over there and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they could probably come up with and their engineers could come up with probably a much more affordable roadway and all of that.
Quite possibly, yeah.
And I think getting the city and having it at the workshop, because having the city engaged, because we have Ladd Lane right there.
Yep.
That's got to connect. And then what other connections are needed?
Yeah, we're just talking general concept about developers and how they can be
But
used
it's about
in the
what
general
we'd be
plan.
talking about, It's about kind of ideas that we've been moving on to the workshop.
Mhm.
So.
Okay.
It works for me. I'm Commissioner Lowe.
I'm fine with it.
Commissioner Culler?
Sounds like a good idea.
Rodriguez?
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay, so
Okay.
there's your consensus.
We will put it in motion.
Okay, good idea. Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Reese.
You're welcome.
And we agreed that if it was a bad idea, it was mine. If it was a good idea, it was
That's
his.
right. That was a side deal.
There we go.
Only if it's successful.
So pretty much we're it, right? I lost my front sheet, but I think we're ready to adjourn.
We just have one other item
Okay.
for the commission. She's still here. She hasn't run off after witnessing this for the last 2.5 hours. So I'd like to introduce a new member of our staff, Chandel Clark, joining our planning staff as a new associate planner. So
Welcome. As you can see, we're all a little crazy, but welcome to the crazy house, okay?
One of the main reasons that we hired Chandela, other than her excellent planning background, is the fact that she has on her resume worked with first graders and kindergartners.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Rest, I'm no more comment.
Perfect. You two will get along well. Yes. So, do I have a motion to do we have Byron? Do we have any kind of end comments or no? You're just a deer in the headlights, dude. Okay. Then I
to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We stand adjourned. Thank you all for coming. And thank you for your comments, Marty. And you, Paul Rovella, Esquire. Yeah. Hey, what?